Hello and welcome to this very special MPW Trailblazers edition of the Aid Station. Today, really excited to be heading to a little town south of London where Robyn Andrews, who's the Regional Manager of GivenGain Foundation for UK and Ireland, and we've recognised the amazing work that Robyn's been doing as our European representative of the MPW Trailblazers. Hey Robyn, great to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for making the time. Really excited to hear some of the great work that you've been doing, the innovation that you've been doing with GivenGain and with the events that you work with. But why don't we start by hearing a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Robyn from GivenGain, the global online fundraising platform. I've been with GivenGain for just over 2 years now, and I recently took on the role as regional manager for the UK and Ireland. And prior to that, I was the fundraising campaign manager. So I've been really lucky to work with events all around the world, from Sri Lanka to Jamaica, and of course at home in England, really kind of helping to manage and execute their fundraising campaigns. So I'm from England. I've lived here my whole life. I've recently just bought my first house with my partner outside of London. And I studied business management and psychology at university. I'm always kind of have a desire to keep learning, and sort of my passion for understanding human nature led me to recently complete a certificate in the psychology of philanthropy. And I joined GivenGain straight after university, after a summer of traveling, and just absolutely loved every minute of it.
What a wonderful story, and so exciting to have your own home. Congratulations on that, and I guess
Thank you.
particularly in these times when people are kind of locked up, to be locked up in your own home at least, and I guess have the opportunity to maybe do, I don't know whether you've been doing any decorating or anything around there, but great opportunity, and you strike me very much as someone who makes the most of any situation. So maybe tell us a little bit about what's the current situation been like for you. Just as we were getting on air, there was a close of a door and your partner was off to go and walk the dog, so you're allowed to do a little bit of that at the moment, but it's high levels of lockdown. What's life like in a little village in south of London?
Yeah, so we're in lockdown tier 5 here in the UK. There's not really much that we can do, but daily life is a little bit hectic right now. Having just bought a house and we are renovating it, lots of painting, lots of DIY, lots of YouTube videos to try and figure out these things as you go along. Also just rehomed a puppy as well. So daily life is quite crazy right now. We're just working from home. We can go outside for exercise and for food. Just been sort of making the most of the free time in terms of spending time with the dog and redecorating the house.
Sounds like a great way to do it, and I guess wonderful to collect virtually with that wonderful GivenGain team we were talking about before, Marius and Clara and the rest of the team, just doing great work all over the world. What have been some of the challenges that you've as an organization faced and you as an individual have faced during this period?
I think I was saying kind of how we're very fortunate in that GivenGain being a global company, and my amazing colleagues are spread around the world. So we kind of almost had a head start in terms of how to connect with one another and how to work successfully in a kind of dispersed way. But definitely kind of the challenges for us as a business really would be kind of helping charities to raise as much money as possible and really face this unprecedented need that they are currently experiencing. So as I'm sure you know, kind of the public health measures on dealing with the coronavirus is really kind of affecting how charities operate, how they raise funds, how they deliver support. And it's a really tough time for them. So kind of especially service delivery charities, there's increased demand and less funds. And yeah, many of our charities relied on kind of in-person events, whether that be marathons or cycling events, or maybe just galas, that haven't been able to go ahead, at least in the UK, because of the lockdown. So we've really been trying to kind of highlight the opportunity to charities, that they can raise funds through virtual events, create their own virtual events, as well as highlighting the opportunity for event organisers to kind of make a positive social impact by encouraging their participants to raise funds for charity. So yeah, it's been a big challenge. I think a lot of charities were more familiar with traditional methods, whether that be like cash donations or offline sponsorship forms. So yeah, really sort of trying to help them to engage their supporters in a new way whilst raising funds.
Yeah, and you've been doing some amazing work, and clearly, lots of headlines all over the world that charities been decimated in many instances, many of them closing their doors at times when they most needed. And I guess what one of the things that I've tried to do with the aid station is get as global as possible. I think so far we've been to 48 different countries.
Wow.
I think this will be episode in the early 90s, I guess, and it's been incredible to see this. There's lots of commonalities, but lots of diversities. And I'm interested to hear, you spoke about Sri Lanka or the work that you've been doing in the UK and US and whatever. Are there any kind of common threads that you've seen, and what are some of the big differences? And I guess you're talking in a highly commercial, tech savvy part of the world in terms of what's happening in London to are you talking about some offline people filling in forms and things, and I'm guessing that's probably in some markets like Sri Lanka where people have less access. How do you kind of straddle that, and what's some of the innovation that you've done? I know you've been the feedback and why you were nominated here, you've been doing some amazing work in terms of innovating and educating. Share a little bit with that if you wouldn't mind, please, Robyn.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so it is something that really fascinates me, kind of the culture of fundraising within each of different countries around the world. And I mean, as a platform, we work with charities in 70 countries. So that just, really varies, and events in 28 countries. So yeah, kind of respecting that sort of culture around charitable giving really influences fundraising. Beliefs, sort of whether it's the government's responsibility to kind of help those in need, or whether it's actually us as a society to help those in need. So yeah, it really, really varies. But as you say, sort of the events that we work with, the one in Sri Lanka, for example, is called the Arugan Bay Half Marathon. And they support, it's actually organised by a charity. They support the Arugan Bay Development Forum, which builds schools for less fortunate children. So yeah, really kind of educating charities on how to use technology. I think it's really easy for me, coming from the UK and sort of being privileged, to kind of presume that everyone knows what digital fundraising is and everyone knows how to use platforms, but that's really not the case. It's kind of doing these webinars that we've been doing to provide inspiration, and then also kind of to provide really sort of step-by-step instructions that it's easy for a charity to implement.
And tell us a little bit about those. I mean, you've cranked out a massive number of webinars, and has it been you that's been hosting those? Have you brought on some special guests? Is it your team? What level in your team? Do you involve Mark as your CEO, or is it the people on the ground that have been doing it? Give us a bit of background of that, because my sense is that you've been a real driver. You've created the initiative, you came up with the idea, you've pulled it together, you've done a lot of the delivery. But I'm really interested because what we're hoping here is, recognizing you for the work that you've done, but sharing this with other people, not only in the not-for-profit sector, but in other sectors, to say, well, what can I learn from here? What are the takeaways of, what you've achieved that might benefit others?
Yeah, so I think it was more of the kind of the beginning of the lockdown that we realized that there's a lot of things that our charities needed help with. We already had sort of a blog that have kind of those sort of advice and inspiration, but nothing really beats that kind of face-to-face, even if it's via screen, and the opportunity to ask questions. So yeah, we just kind of came up with a webinar plan. It was mainly myself and my colleague Clara as well. She provided me with amazing support. And it's always beneficial when you've got someone else on the team that speaks different languages, so we can really kind of reach a wider audience. Yeah, so it was really the two of us. Excuse me. The webinar topics really varied, and it was actually great fun, kind of sort of doing something different each time. But we asked our charities kind of after the webinar with a poll, you know, what do you want to know next? These are some of the options. What should we tackle? Yeah, and we always tried to get guest speakers, whether it was an industry expert, perhaps it was someone on our team, like our digital marketing manager. She joined us for our social media webinar, or we'd try to bring on charities to get them involved and to kind of get them to share their story and what they think worked for them. And fundraisers as well. That was really quite nice to have people. We did a webinar on sort of understanding what your fundraiser needs. So having fundraisers join us and kind of say, the charity, you know, didn't say thank you enough, or they gave me amazing support material. This really worked, that didn't. So trying to keep it as engaging as possible, yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then again, across all those different cultures, tell us, is there any, you know, any particular huge learning that came from you out of the cultural thing? Because it's, you know, it's fascinating. I'm lucky that I've worked all over the world and met amazing people, and you know, we can make assumptions going into one country that's completely the reverse in another country. I mean, are there any kind of, is it a funny story or a aha moment that happened during the course of that would be of interest to share with people that are watching?
So I think that at least within kind of my colleagues, we do a lot of fundraising ourselves. So we had a Human State, which is our kind of sort of holdings company. We did a corporate fundraiser. So that was really amazing to kind of immerse ourselves within that fundraising experience. And I think a lot of corporates as well are kind of taking up this opportunity of digital fundraising, encouraging their dispersed staff members to still be engaged within one another, to kind of give back and do their bit. And yeah, a lot of our colleagues, obviously being from different places around the world, really supporting charities that are back home. So it doesn't matter if I'm English, I might want to support my local mental health charity, or because I'm aware of another charity in, say, rural South Africa that I know needs help, that I want to support them, and just being able to do so. So really kind of, it's been eye-opening to see that people do support their local charities and the ones that they have an affiliation with. But it's been also fantastic to see that kind of my generation, having grown up immersed in technology and immersed in social media, we really see all of the problems that are happening not so close to home, and have a desire to kind of solve them as well.
Yeah, great point. That technology just gives us so much more of a global reach, doesn't it? And so, you know, I guess extending on that, your generation, tech savvy, understanding it, how have you helped, you know, some of the older generation event organizers? What are some of the challenges you face with them? Some of the older generation fundraisers in some of those countries where they don't necessarily have the resources. What have been some of the key takeaways from that have been useful learnings that you could share?
Yeah, so I really do feel that my generation, so I talk about my generation, which is Generation Z, they're soon to be the largest group of runners alongside millennials. I mean, I think the kind of desire to start running tends to start when you're about 20, and for health reasons, and sort of just enjoying the outdoors. So yeah, I really feel that there's so much benefit for event organizers to consider attracting the next generation of runners and sort of what they are looking for. And it isn't primarily chasing medals. You know, me personally, I'm not trying to get my best time. I'm not trying to get first place. It's more about that whole race day experience and the atmosphere and being engaged, being connected with others. And that's what I feel that fundraising can do. It can really kind of help the event to attract those future participants whilst creating a meaningful race experience. So yeah, it really kind of is just beneficial to all parties involved. And it's just been kind of fascinating to kind of have the opportunity to put that across to race organisers.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So, well, one of the things we discussed at the MPW conference in December was, you know, is the word race even appropriate? And interesting here, you use the word race twice in there, and I'm wondering if that's kind of part of a legacy, or would we be attracting more people if we called them events or experiences and so on? I'd love to get your take on that. Do you use the word race because that's kind of ingrained and that's what the industry uses, and is that potentially a pivot that the end, because everyone obviously is looking like, where to from here? How does this industry bounce back? How do we re-engineer? If I were to put it to you that we shouldn't call them races anymore, we should call them events or experiences, do you think that would resonate more with Gen Z?
Yeah, I do actually. I think in my mind, it's just sort of the way race and event just seem to be interchangeable. So just tend to use both in a sentence. But yes, I suppose there's always going to be people that are wanting to be the first and to focus on their personal bests. And the same with my generation as well. I know that Clara, she's my colleague, she's kind of into running and would take part in races. Whereas myself, I prefer sort of those kind of like mud runs, fun challenges. So if they were called a race, then it would be a bit confusing. So that is they're definitely more kind of an experience.
Yeah, okay, great analogy. I'm interested, just very quickly, because time flies with these things, but from a leadership perspective, you're obviously, you're being a young leader in the industry and in your organization. Who inspires you as a leader? Are there any principles that you follow as a young leader?
Yeah, so I definitely would say my line manager, Marius. So I think we had a QR within the company not too long ago, and a quote came up, which was, to trust is a risk, but not to trust is a bigger risk. So really kind of he's given me the opportunity to kind of just sort of get on with things whilst always being there to kind of provide advice, but really allowing someone to kind of the individuality and really kind of go ahead with their ideas. Yes, and he always is telling me to work smarter, not harder. So that's something that I try and do every day, sort of, especially with working from home, knowing when you're most productive and when you're going to get your best work done, and just sort of concentrating then.
Yeah, a couple of great tips there. And then, as always, I love to end with something inspirational. I'm sure you've seen so many inspiring stories. You're an inspiring young lady yourself, but what is there one inspiring story that you'd like to leave people with?
Oh, it's so hard to pick just one. We've seen so many incredible fundraisers on GivenGain, really kind of getting creative and adapting to the situation and using this like pent up demand for movement and doing something for good. Then live streaming is becoming such a big thing. People live streaming music concerts in order to raise funds, or live streaming themselves going around the garden 100 times to do an ultra marathon. One of my colleagues rode the length of the Thames for charity. Yeah, there's just been so many different things that have really kind of been incredible.
Wow, so people being innovative, having their own idea, not copying others, coming up with original ideas and raising money in the process and impacting charities.
Exactly, yeah. A gentleman climbed the height of Mount Everest on a staircase at home.
Wow.
Someone had a 2-meter balcony and they managed to do a marathon just up and down on that. So just surprising that no matter how sort of frustrated you're feeling at your event being cancelled, people are still coming up with these amazing ideas.
Yeah, incredible. Robyn, it's so wonderful talking to you. Thanks for those great insights. Congrats on being recognized as an MPW Trailblazers, and keep up all the amazing work you've been doing. Thanks so much for making the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing.
Great. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.